You've been lied to about American history. Every textbook, every Hollywood movie, every story you've heard has painted Native American women as background characters. Silent figures carrying baskets or tanning hides while men did the important work. But here's the truth that will completely change how you see the survival of entire civilizations. Native American women weren't just supporting their communities. They were the community. They were the economists, the architects, the diplomats, the scientists, the spiritual leaders, and the reason their people survived thousands of years of climate change, migration, and eventually, one of history's most devastating genocides. What they actually did every single day was so complex, so brilliant, and so essential that without them, there would be no Native American history at all. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why the systematic erasure of their contributions wasn't just historical negligence, it was a deliberate strategy. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn will make you question everything you thought you knew about who built America before Europeans even arrived. The foundation of survival. Agriculture and food systems. Let's start with something that seems simple, but is actually revolutionary: food. When we think about Native American communities, we often picture men hunting buffalo or deer. And yes, hunting happened. But here's what they don't teach you in school. In most Native American societies, hunting provided only about 20 to 30% of the total food supply. The remaining 70 to 80%? That came from agriculture, gathering, and food preservation, work that was almost entirely managed, developed, and controlled by women. Native American women weren't just farmers. They were agricultural scientists who developed some of the most important crops in human history. The three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, weren't discovered by accident. This was deliberate, sophisticated agricultural engineering that took generations of careful observation, experimentation, and knowledge transfer. Women noticed that corn depleted nitrogen from the soil. They observed that beans, through their root systems, actually fixed nitrogen back into the earth. They recognized that squash plants, with their broad leaves, prevented weed growth and retained soil moisture. So they planted all three together in a symbiotic system that modern agricultural scientists now recognize as one of the most sustainable farming methods ever developed. Think about what this means. These women understood soil chemistry without microscopes. They grasped the concept of companion planting centuries before European agricultural science. They created a food production system so efficient that it could support large, complex civilizations with permanent settlements, trade networks, and sophisticated social structures. In the eastern woodlands, Haudenosaunee women, often called Iroquois, controlled all agricultural production. And when I say controlled, I mean they owned the fields, decided what to plant, determined when to harvest, and managed the distribution of food. Men might clear the land initially, but from that point forward, agriculture was women's domain. These weren't small vegetable gardens. We're talking about extensive agricultural fields that produced surplus crops for trade, for storage, and for maintaining their communities through harsh winters. The Haudenosaunee women developed over a dozen varieties of corn, each adapted for different purposes. Some for fresh eating, some for drying and storage, some specifically for making the cornmeal that became a staple food. They cultivated more than 60 varieties of beans and 8 types of squash. This wasn't subsistence farming. This was sophisticated agricultural diversity designed to ensure food security under any conditions. In the southeast, Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, and Chickasaw, women managed agricultural systems that impressed even the European. Colonists who arrived intent on calling these people savages. Women's agricultural fields were often larger and more productive than the farms. European settlers established. They grew not just the three sisters, but also sunflowers for oil, tobacco for ceremonial use, and various medicinal plants. They understood crop rotation, allowing fields to lie fallow to restore soil fertility. They practiced selective breeding, saving seeds from the strongest, most productive plants to ensure better harvests in subsequent years. But agriculture was just the beginning. Native American women were also master foragers with encyclopedic knowledge of their environments. In the Great Basin, Paiute and Shoshone women knew the location, growing season, and uses of hundreds of plant species. They knew which roots were edible and when to harvest them for maximum nutrition. They understood which berries were safe and which were poisonous. They knew which plants had medicinal properties and how to prepare them. This knowledge wasn't written in books. It was memorized, practiced, and passed down through generations of teaching. In the Pacific Northwest, women harvested camas roots, a staple food that required extensive processing. They knew exactly when the bulbs reached peak nutrition. Too early, and they were small and bitter. Too late, and they became woody. They dug the bulbs carefully to avoid damaging next year's crop. Then they processed them through elaborate pit cooking methods that could take 2 or 3 days, transforming the inulin in the bulbs into sweet, digestible sugars. A single harvest could provide food for months. In California, Chumash, Miwok, and Pomo women managed oak groves like orchards, harvesting acorns that they processed through a labor-intensive but brilliant method. Acorns contain tannins that make them bitter and difficult to digest. Women developed leaching techniques, grinding the acorns into meal, and then repeatedly rinsing the meal with water to remove the tannins. The result was a nutritious flour that could be stored for years and used to make bread, porridge, and other foods. A single woman could process enough acorns in harvest season to feed her family for an entire year. Southwest Puebloan women cultivated corn in one of the harshest agricultural environments on Earth, in a landscape where rainfall was scarce and unpredictable, where summer temperatures could exceed 100 degrees. They developed drought-resistant corn varieties and sophisticated irrigation systems. Hopi women, in particular, maintained corn varieties that could grow with minimal water, sending roots deep into the soil to find moisture. They understood the microenvironments of their landscape, knowing which areas retained moisture and which received the most sun. These women also developed extensive food preservation techniques that ensured their communities survived through winter, drought, and other hardships. They dried corn, beans, squash, berries, and meat. They created pemmican, a nutrient-dense mixture of dried meat, fat, and berries that could last for years. They stored food in specially constructed pits, granaries, and baskets designed to protect against moisture, pests, and spoilage. They smoked fish, made jerky, and created various fermented foods. The sophistication of these preservation methods can't be overstated. Without refrigeration, without canning technology, without any of the food preservation tools we take for granted, Native American women developed systems that kept food safe, nutritious, and edible for months or even years. They understood the relationship between moisture and spoilage, between temperature and bacterial growth, between salt and preservation. They were food scientists. And here's what's crucial. Because women controlled food production, they held enormous economic and political power in their communities. In many Native American societies, women's control over agriculture meant they controlled the food supply, which gave them authority in decision-making, in diplomacy, and in community governance. This wasn't a society where women were relegated to domestic spaces while men made important decisions. Food was the foundation of survival, and women controlled that foundation. Architects of home and community now. Let's talk about another aspect of Native American women's work that has been drastically underestimated. They were the architects and builders of their communities' homes and structures. When European colonists first encountered Native American settlements, they often described them as primitive because the structures didn't look like European houses. But this wasn't primitiveness. It was sophisticated architectural adaptation to climate, resources, and lifestyle. And in most Native American societies, women were the primary architects, builders, and owners of these structures. In the Great Plains, Lakota, Cheyenne, and other nations lived in teepees. We often think of teepees as simple tents, but they were actually ingenious pieces of engineering designed by women. A teepee wasn't just some buffalo hides thrown over poles. Women had to select the right trees for poles, straight, strong, lightweight, and prepare them precisely. They had to hunt, butcher, or trade for the buffalo hides, then process those hides through an incredibly labor-intensive method that included scraping, stretching, treating, and smoking. A single buffalo hide could take days to properly prepare. Then came the sewing. Women had to cut the hides into precise patterns, understanding geometry and spatial relationships to create a conical structure that would shed rain, withstand high winds, and allow smoke from the central fire to escape through the top. They sewed the hides together using sinew thread, which they made themselves by processing animal tendons and bone or wood needles. The result was a structure that could be erected in less than an hour, taken down just as quickly, and transported by horse or dog. In summer, the bottom could be rolled up for ventilation. In winter, an inner lining created an insulating air pocket. The door always faced east for spiritual reasons and practical ones. Prevailing winds came from the west. Women owned these tippies. If a marriage ended, the man left and the woman kept the home. This wasn't symbolic ownership. These were valuable possessions that represented hundreds of hours of skilled labor. In the eastern woodlands, women built longhouses. These weren't small structures. A typical Haudenosaunee longhouse could be 60 to 100 feet long, 20 feet wide, and 20 feet high. Multiple related families, often an elder woman, her daughters, and their families, lived together in one longhouse, which could house 30 to 60 people. Women directed the construction, choosing the location, organizing the work, and maintaining the structure. The frame was made from bent saplings, creating a barrel vault shape covered with sheets of elm bark that women harvested, prepared, and attached. Inside, women created raised sleeping platforms, storage areas, and designated spaces for each family while maintaining common areas and fire pits. The longhouse represented more than shelter. It was a physical manifestation of the clan system. Haudenosaunee society was matrilineal, meaning family lineage passed through women. The longhouse belonged to the clan mother and her female descendants. Men who married into the family came to live in their wife's longhouse. If a marriage ended, the man returned to his mother's or sister's longhouse. Women literally owned the domestic space and the family structure. In the Southwest, Puebloan women built with adobe and stone, creating multi-story apartment-like structures that housed entire communities. Women made adobe bricks from clay, sand, straw, and water mixed in precise proportions, then dried in the sun. They laid these bricks with adobe mortar, building walls that could be several feet thick, providing insulation against the extreme temperature swings of the desert. Women maintained and repaired these structures, applying fresh adobe plaster each year to protect against erosion. Some Pueblo structures built by women's labor have stood for over 1,000 years. These weren't random building projects. Pueblo architecture demonstrated sophisticated understanding of passive solar heating and cooling. Rooms were arranged to maximize winter sun exposure and minimize summer heat. Windows were positioned to allow cross-ventilation. Thick walls absorbed heat during the day and released it at night. Women who built and maintained these structures were applying principles of sustainable architecture that modern builders are only now rediscovering. In the Southeast, women built various structures depending on the season and purpose. Summer houses were open and airy. Winter houses were smaller and more insulated. Women wove cane mats, thatched roofs, and created walls from wattle and daub, a mixture of woven sticks covered with clay. They built menstrual huts where women went during their periods, which weren't places of shame but rather women's spaces for rest, community, and spiritual practice away from daily responsibilities. In California, women built different structures for different purposes using available materials. In some regions, they constructed dome-shaped houses from bent willow poles covered with tulle reeds. In other areas, they built conical bark houses. They created sweat houses, granaries for food storage, and sheltered work areas. Each structure was designed for its specific function, demonstrating understanding of materials, climate, and human needs. Women also designed the interior spaces of homes, creating storage systems, sleeping arrangements, and work areas. They wove mats for floors and sleeping platforms. They made baskets in various sizes for storing everything from seeds to tools to clothing. They created specialized containers for water, cooking, and food storage. They organized the domestic space for efficiency, comfort, and social interaction. But women's architectural contributions went beyond individual homes. They often had significant input into village layout and community design. They determined where agricultural fields should be located relative to water sources and living areas. They organized communal workspaces. They helped decide where paths and gathering areas should be established. Their daily work gave them practical knowledge about efficient spatial organization, and their voices carried weight in community planning. Textile artists and engineers, the clothing on people's backs, the blankets that kept families warm, the bags that carried possessions, the fishing nets that caught salmon, the cords that bound tools to handles. All of this came from women's textile production. And calling it textile production almost seems inadequate because what Native American women did with fibers was nothing short of engineering magic. Let's start with the raw materials. Women had to identify, harvest, and process fibers from plants and animals. In the Pacific Northwest, they harvested cedar bark, processing it into soft, pliable fibers. This wasn't as simple as pulling bark off a tree. Women knew which trees to use, which season to harvest, how to remove bark without killing the tree, and how to beat, soak, and separate the bark into usable fibers. They created two types: inner bark for soft materials like clothing and diapers, outer bark for rougher materials like mats and rope. In the Southwest, women processed cotton, yucca, and agave fibers. Cotton had to be grown, harvested, and then tediously separated from its seeds. Done by hand, one cotton boll at a time. Yucca leaves had to be pounded to separate the fibers from the pulp. Agave required roasting, scraping, and processing to extract its strong fibers. On the plains, women processed buffalo hides and sinew, but they also used plant fibers from various grasses and plants. In the eastern woodlands, women worked with plant fibers like milkweed, nettle, and basswood, as well as animal materials. Processing these raw materials was just the first step. Next came spinning, twisting fibers into thread or yarn. Women developed various spinning techniques, some using simple hand-rolling methods on their thighs, others using sophisticated spindles. They understood that the direction of twist, the tightness of the spin, and the combination of fibers all affected the final product's strength and character. They could create fine thread for delicate work or thick, strong cordage for heavy use. Then came weaving, and this is where Native American women's artistry and technical skill become truly breathtaking. Different regions developed different weaving traditions, but all demonstrated extraordinary sophistication. Navajo women became legendary weavers, creating textiles so beautiful and well-made that they became valuable trade goods and eventually museum pieces. On large upright looms they wove wool from sheep, animals introduced by Spanish colonizers, but quickly integrated into Navajo life, into blankets, rugs, and clothing. But this wasn't simple over-under weaving. Navajo women created complex geometric patterns, perfectly balanced designs, and subtle color gradations, all without written patterns. They held the entire design in their minds, counting threads and maintaining pattern consistency across textiles that could be 6 feet wide and 10 feet long. They created tapestry weaving so tight that the finished pieces were waterproof. But weaving existed long before sheep arrived. Ancestral Puebloan women wove cotton into fabric, creating clothing, blankets, and ceremonial items. They used backstrap looms, belt looms, and other technologies to produce textiles so fine that Spanish colonists described them as being as soft as silk. In California, women created some of the finest basketry in the world. And yes, basketry is weaving, three-dimensional weaving that required even more complex technical skill than flat weaving. Pomo, Chumash, and other California women created baskets so tightly woven they could hold water. They used multiple weaving techniques: coiling, twining, and plaiting. They understood that different materials had different properties. Some were flexible when green but became stiff when dry. Others remained pliable. Some could be split into very fine strands. Others were better kept thick. These women could weave baskets smaller than a thumbnail, feats of technical skill that required perfect vision, steady hands, and extraordinary patience. They also wove large baskets for storage, cooking baskets that could be used with hot stones to boil water, carrying baskets in various shapes for different purposes, baby cradles, and ceremonial baskets. They incorporated decorative patterns using different colored materials, creating geometric designs, representations of animals, and abstract patterns. Each basket could take weeks or months to complete. The patterns weren't random. They often carried cultural meaning, family stories, or spiritual significance. Basket designs could identify which community a woman came from, which family she belonged to, and her individual artistic style. The most skilled weavers were highly respected, their work sought after for trade and ceremonial purposes. In the Pacific Northwest, women wove clothing, blankets, and ceremonial items from cedar bark and mountain goat wool. Chilkat blankets, created by Tlingit women, were among the most prestigious items in the region. These weren't simple blankets, but complex woven artworks featuring stylized representations of clan crests and spiritual beings. Creating a Chilkat blanket could take a year or more. The designs were so complex that they required a pattern board, often painted by a man, but the weaving itself the interpretation of the design into textile form was entirely the woman's domain. She had to translate a two-dimensional painting into a three-dimensional woven object, maintaining design proportions, choosing colors, and executing technically difficult weaving that included long twisted fringe. These blankets were so valuable, they were used as bride price, diplomatic gifts, and markers of high status. Women also created fishing nets, bags, ropes, and cords of all types. A fishing net large enough for salmon fishing required hundreds of hours of work, creating even mesh throughout, understanding the tension needed to make the net both strong and flexible. The rope that held tools, the cord that laced clothing, the straps that helped carry loads, all made by women. They also processed and created leather. Tanning hides was brutal, difficult work that required strength, skill, and knowledge. Women had to flesh the hide, removing all meat and fat, then treat it with various substances to transform raw skin into soft, pliable leather. Different methods produced different results. Brain tanning, using the animal's brain, created incredibly soft leather. Smoking hides made them waterproof and preserved them. Women understood the chemistry of tanning even without formal education in biochemistry. From these prepared hides, women created clothing, dresses, shirts, leggings, moccasins. They cut the leather into patterns, sewed pieces together with sinew thread, and decorated garments with quill work, beadwork, shells, or painting. This decoration wasn't frivolous. It marked identity, status, achievement, and belonging. A woman's clothing could tell observers which nation she belonged to, her family lineage, her personal accomplishments, and her aesthetic sensibilities. Quill work, decoration using dyed porcupine quills, was an art form primarily practiced by Plains and Eastern Woodlands women. Women collected porcupine quills, sorted them by size, dyed them using plant materials to create various colors, then softened them in their mouths and applied them to leather or birch bark in intricate patterns. This required incredible skill. Quills are sharp, brittle, and difficult to work with. Women created geometric patterns of extraordinary complexity, covering entire garments or creating medallions and strips of decoration. When European traders brought glass beads, many Native American women adapted their artistic traditions to this new medium, creating beadwork that continued their cultural patterns while exploring the new possibilities of color and form that beads offered. This wasn't abandoning traditional culture. It was the same adaptive creativity that had always characterized Native American women's work. Every textile item represented hours or days or months of work. Every basket, blanket, garment, or bag embodied technical skill, cultural knowledge, artistic vision, and physical labor. And women were creating these items constantly, for their own families, for trade, for gifts, for ceremonial use. The textile production, coming from Native American women's hands, was an economic engine that clothed, housed, and supported their communities, pottery, tools, and material culture. In many Native American societies, women were also the primary creators of pottery tools and other material goods essential to daily life. Pottery production was almost exclusively women's work in most southwestern and southeastern communities. This wasn't just playing with mud. Creating functional pottery required geological knowledge, technical skill, artistic ability, and practical engineering. First, women had to find the right clay. Not all clay is suitable for pottery. It needs the right plasticity, the right mineral content, and the right behavior when fired. Women knew where to find good clay sources in their territories. They knew which clay was best for cooking pots, which was better for storage vessels, and which was ideal for ceremonial items. They had to dig the clay, then process it, removing stones, roots, and impurities. They often added temper, materials like sand, crushed pottery shards, or volcanic ash mixed with the clay to prevent cracking during drying and firing. The ratio of temper to clay affected the final vessel's properties, and women understood these relationships through generations of experience. Then came shaping. Many Native American potters used coiling methods, building vessels from ropes of clay smoothed together. Others used paddle and anvil techniques or molding methods. Creating a symmetrical, well-proportioned pot required skill developed over years of practice. The walls had to be even thickness. Too thin, and the pot would crack. Too thick, and it wouldn't fire properly. Large vessels used for food storage could take days to build. Before firing, many women decorated their pottery. They could incise designs, paint with mineral pigments, polish surfaces to a glossy shine, or create textured patterns. In the Southwest, Puebloan women developed distinctive pottery styles, black-on-white patterns, polychrome designs, carved decorations. Each pueblo had its own artistic traditions, and master potters were recognized and respected. Firing pottery required controlled heat and careful monitoring. Women built fires and placed pottery in them, managing the temperature and atmosphere to achieve desired results. Black pottery, like that famously created by San Ildefonso potter Maria Martinez in the early 20th century, required a reducing atmosphere with less oxygen. Red pottery needed an oxidizing atmosphere. Women understood these technical requirements and controlled fire accordingly. The finished pottery had to be functional. Cooking pots had to withstand repeated heating and cooling without cracking. Water jars had to be slightly porous to allow evaporation cooling, but not so porous that they leaked excessively. Storage vessels needed to protect contents from moisture and pests. Women engineered their pottery to meet these functional requirements while also creating beautiful objects. In the eastern woodlands, women also created pottery, though different environmental factors and cultural preferences led to different styles. They often created vessels with distinctive cord-marked or fabric-impressed surfaces created by pressing cord or fabric into wet clay. These weren't just decorative, the texture could make pots easier to grip. Women also created various tools and implements. They made bone needles, awls, and scrapers. They created wooden tools for farming, food processing, and construction. They made scrapers for processing hides from stone or bone. They created grinding stones for processing corn and other foods, choosing appropriate stones, shaping them through pecking and grinding, and maintaining them over years of use. In some societies, women also created stone tools. Though stone tool production was more often shared between genders or primarily done by men. However, women were often the primary users of stone tools for food processing, so they had input into design and functionality. Women maintained household goods and repaired damaged items. They could patch pottery with natural resins, repair torn clothing, fix broken baskets, and restore worn tools. This maintenance work is often invisible in historical records, but it was essential to household economy. Keeping things functional extended their useful life and reduced the need for constant replacement. Women also created specialized items for specific purposes. They made cradle boards for carrying babies, carefully designed to keep infants safe and comfortable while allowing mothers to work with their hands free. They created various types of containers for different uses, baskets for collecting, bags for carrying, boxes for storing. They made household furnishings like mats, cushions, and partitions. In coastal regions, women created sophisticated technologies for marine resources. They made specialized nets for different types of fishing. They created tools for processing shellfish and preparing fish. They made watertight baskets sealed with natural resins for carrying water or storing liquids. The cumulative effect of all this material production was staggering. Every object in daily use was handmade, often by women. The dishes people ate from, the clothes they wore, the bags they carried, the beds they slept on, the walls that sheltered them, all created through skilled labor, most of it performed by women. Medicine, healing, and botanical knowledge. Native American women were often the primary medical practitioners and botanical experts in their communities, possessing encyclopedic knowledge of medicinal plants and healing practices. This knowledge was vast and sophisticated. Women knew hundreds of plants and their medicinal properties. They knew which plants reduced fever, which eased pain, which treated infections, which helped with childbirth, which addressed digestive issues, which treated wounds. They understood that different parts of plants had different properties. Sometimes the root was medicinal, sometimes the leaves, sometimes the bark, sometimes the flowers or seeds. They knew when to harvest each plant for maximum potency. They also understood preparation methods. Some medicines required fresh plants. Others needed drying. Some required boiling to extract active compounds. Others were used as poultices applied directly to skin. Some needed to be steeped in cold water, others in hot. Some medicines were taken internally, others applied externally. Women understood dosage, how much was therapeutic and how much was dangerous. They knew which treatments were appropriate for children versus adults, for pregnant women versus others. This wasn't folk medicine based on superstition. This was genuine pharmacology developed through centuries of observation and experimentation. Modern pharmaceutical research has confirmed that many plants used by Native American healers contain genuinely therapeutic compounds. Willow bark, used for pain and fever, contains salicin, the compound that led to aspirin. Purple coneflower, used to boost immune function, is now sold as echinacea in pharmacies worldwide. Many other Native American remedies have proven pharmacologically active. Women healers treated injuries, cleaning wounds, applying poultices to prevent infection, setting broken bones, treating burns. They attended births, using their knowledge of herbs that eased labor, strengthened contractions, or reduced postpartum bleeding. They knew how to turn a breech baby, how to massage a woman through difficult labor, when to intervene and when to wait. Maternal mortality was real, but skilled midwives made childbirth safer. They treated illnesses, fevers, coughs, digestive issues, skin conditions. They understood that some conditions required rest, some required particular diets, some needed herbal treatment. They recognized that recovery often required addressing multiple factors, not just giving medicine but ensuring proper nutrition, adequate rest, and supportive care. Women healers also addressed spiritual and emotional health. In many Native American worldviews, physical illness could have spiritual causes, and healing required addressing both physical and spiritual dimensions. Women conducted healing ceremonies, used prayer and song, and created environments conducive to recovery. They understood that emotional state affected physical health, that social support aided healing, that hope and belief mattered. Specialized healers became respected community members. Their knowledge was recognized as valuable, their services needed and appreciated. Young women apprenticed to experienced healers, learning through observation and practice over many years. This knowledge transfer was primarily oral, watching, doing, memorizing the properties of hundreds of plants and their uses. Women also managed public health in their communities. They understood contagion and quarantine, isolating sick people to prevent disease spread. They emphasized sanitation, managing waste disposal, and ensuring clean water supplies. They promoted good nutrition, understanding that well-fed people resisted illness better than malnourished ones. They also served as dentists of sorts, treating toothaches and dental issues with various remedies. They were optometrists, creating eye washes for infections. They were dermatologists, treating skin conditions with poultices and salves. They were mental health counselors, helping people through grief, trauma, and emotional distress. Traditional healing practices continue in many Native American communities today, with contemporary Native healers, many of them women, maintaining traditional knowledge while also integrating modern medical understanding. This isn't rejecting modern medicine, but recognizing that traditional healing practices offer valuable contributions to community wellness. Spiritual leaders and ceremonialists in many Native American societies, women held important spiritual roles as ceremonialists, keepers of sacred knowledge, and religious leaders. In Haudenosaunee society, clan mothers held significant spiritual authority. They selected the chiefs who represented the nation in the Great Council, and they could remove chiefs who weren't serving the people well. They participated in important ceremonies and maintained sacred traditions. Their wisdom was sought in spiritual matters. In many communities, women were responsible for certain ceremonies. They might lead harvest ceremonies, giving thanks for crops. They might conduct naming ceremonies for babies. They might perform purification rituals or healing ceremonies. These weren't minor responsibilities. Ceremonies were central to Native American cultural and spiritual life. Women often maintained sacred objects and knowledge. They might keep sacred bundles, collections of spiritually powerful objects wrapped in specially prepared materials. They might memorize sacred songs, stories, and prayers, passing them down through generations. They might maintain altars or sacred spaces. In some societies, women could become powerful spiritual leaders. They might receive visions that guided their communities. They might have healing powers that went beyond herbal medicine. They might serve as intermediaries between the physical and spiritual worlds. Women's reproductive capacity was often seen as sacred. Menstruation was powerful, not dirty or shameful, but potent. Menstruating women might separate from the community not because they were impure, but because their power during this time was so great it could interfere with other activities. Childbirth was sacred, and women who had given birth possessed special spiritual status. Women were often involved in death rituals and mourning practices. They prepared bodies for burial, conducted mourning ceremonies, and helped communities process grief. In some societies, women maintained sacred fires that were never allowed to go out, tending these fires as spiritual practice. Women created sacred items used in ceremonies, special baskets, ceremonial clothing, decorated objects used in rituals. These items weren't just functional, they were spiritual tools, and creating them was itself a spiritual practice. Stories were sacred, and women were often the primary storytellers. They told creation stories, moral tales, historical accounts, and family stories. These stories weren't entertainment, they were education, cultural transmission, spiritual teaching, and identity formation all wrapped together. Listening to a grandmother tell stories was how children learned who they were, where they came from, what was expected of them, and how the world worked. Women taught children not just practical skills, but also spiritual practices, moral values, and cultural traditions. They explained religious concepts, taught prayers, and guided young people through spiritual development. This teaching role was fundamental to cultural continuity. Economic power and trade women's control over food production, material goods, and household resources gave them significant economic power in many Native American societies. In matrilineal societies like the Haudenosaunee, Cherokee, and many others, women owned property. They owned the houses, the agricultural fields, the harvests, and household goods. Men might use these things, but women controlled them. If a marriage ended, the man left and the woman kept everything. The complete opposite of European and American property. Systems where married women couldn't own property, and everything belonged to their husbands. Women controlled the distribution of food. They decided how much food to store, how much to trade, and how to allocate resources within households. This gave them real economic power. Men might make decisions about warfare or diplomacy, but women decided whether the community had enough stored food to sustain a long journey or support a gathering of multiple communities. Women participated in trade networks. They traded surplus agricultural products, pottery, baskets, textiles, and other goods they produced. In some cases, women traveled to trade fairs and markets. In other cases, they traded through intermediaries, but they controlled the goods and made decisions about what to trade and for what. Trade wasn't just economic, it was social and diplomatic, building relationships between communities. The goods women produced had real value. A beautifully woven basket, a well-made pot, a decorated garment, these were valuable trade items. Women's labor created wealth. The blankets, pottery, baskets, and other goods produced by Native American women were sought after by European traders who exchanged metal tools, cloth, and other goods for native products. Women were participants in these exchanges, not passive observers. Women's economic contributions supported their families and communities. The food they grew fed people. The clothing they made kept people warm. The baskets and pottery they created allowed for storage and food preparation. The hides they tanned became clothing and shelter. Women's labor wasn't supplemental, it was foundational to economic survival. In some societies, women controlled particular economic resources. Tlingit women controlled fishing sites and berry-picking areas, passing these resources down through female lines. Pueblo women owned houses and passed them to their daughters. Cherokee women owned fields and determined what would be grown. Women's economic power translated into political influence. In societies where women controlled food distribution, their voices mattered in community decisions. Leaders couldn't ignore women's perspectives because women controlled resources that leaders needed. This created political systems where women's input was sought and valued. Diplomatic roles and political power. Native American women exercised political power and diplomatic influence in various ways, depending on their society's structure. In the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, clan mothers held significant political authority. The Confederacy was governed by a council of chiefs, but these chiefs were selected by clan mothers. If a chief didn't fulfill his responsibilities properly, the clan mothers could remove him, a system of checks and balances that gave women real political power. Clan mothers also had to approve declarations of war. Warriors might want to fight, but without the clan mother's consent, war couldn't proceed. This made sense because women controlled the food supplies that warriors would need for a campaign. Cherokee women also held political power. Beloved women were selected leaders who advised chiefs and had authority in decisions about war and peace. Nancy Ward, perhaps the most famous beloved woman, used her position to advocate for peace between Cherokee and European settlers in the 18th century. She spoke at council meetings, advised warriors, and participated in treaty negotiations. Her voice carried weight not because she was an exception, but because Cherokee society recognized women's political authority. In many Native American societies, women could speak in council meetings. This wasn't universal. Some societies were more male-dominated, but in many communities, women's perspectives were sought on important decisions. Older women, in particular, were often respected advisors whose wisdom guided community choices. Women participated in diplomatic negotiations. When communities met to discuss alliances, trade agreements, or peace treaties, women were often part of the delegations. They might speak directly or advise male relatives who spoke. They offered perspectives on how proposed agreements would affect daily life, food security, and community welfare. Women served as cultural ambassadors. When different communities came together for ceremonies, trade, or diplomatic meetings, women's interactions built relationships. Marriages between communities often involved women moving to their husband's community or vice versa, creating kinship ties that linked different groups. Women passed down political traditions and cultural values. They taught children about their people's history, their governmental systems, and their relationships with other nations. This education shaped each generation's understanding of their political identity.
Bows and arrows, or the more ancient atlatl and dart system, were fine-tuned for sub-zero performance. Bows, whether simple self-bows or more complex composite designs, were often constructed from woods chosen for their flexibility in cold or reinforced with sinew and horn to prevent brittleness. Bowstrings, typically made from animal sinew, were meticulously prepared and sometimes treated with animal fats to maintain pliability and strength. Arrows and darts featured shafts carefully straightened and seasoned to resist warping, often fletched with feathers from local birds, which remained effective even when iced. Arrowheads and dart points, chipped from flint or obsidian, or carved from bone, were designed for optimal penetration through thick winter hides and dense fur. Every aspect of these tools, from material selection to construction technique, reflected a sophisticated engineering approach, ensuring reliability and efficacy in the most challenging of conditions. Undefined. Shelter building tools, axes, scrapers, awls. The construction and maintenance of resilient winter shelters demanded a sophisticated array of tools, each meticulously designed for specific tasks. Central to many timber-frame structures were axes, fundamental for felling trees and processing wood into manageable components. Early iterations comprised hafted stone heads, expertly flaked for cutting edges, or robust bone tools. With the advent of trade and later, limited metalworking, iron axes became highly prized, significantly enhancing efficiency in timber preparation for frameworks and fuel. For dwellings requiring hide coverings, such as the iconic tipi or other insulated structures, scrapers were indispensable. Fashioned from bone, antler, or sharpened stone, these tools were crucial for meticulously removing flesh, fat, and hair from animal hides, then softening them to create pliable, durable, and weather-resistant material. Following this preparation, awls and needles, typically crafted from bone or antler, became vital. Awls were used to puncture precise holes in thick hides or bark sheets, through which sinew or plant fibers could be threaded by fine needles, allowing for the strong, airtight stitching necessary to assemble coverings and create insulated layers. For communities constructing subterranean or semi-subterranean dwellings, such as earth lodges or pit houses, specialized excavation tools were paramount. Simple yet effective shovels and digging sticks, fashioned from sturdy wood or bone, allowed for the painstaking excavation of earth, creating the foundational depressions that offered superior insulation against the bitter cold. In the Arctic, a unique and highly specialized tool emerged, the snow knife. Carved from bone, antler, or occasionally tough wood, these elongated blades were essential for precisely cutting and shaping compacted snow blocks, enabling the rapid and efficient construction of igloos. HLC, testament to ingenious adaptation to an extreme environment. What becomes clear is that even seemingly rudimentary tools were not merely functional, but were products of profound precision and a deep ancestral knowledge of materials. The selection of specific stone for its flaking properties, the careful shaping of bone for optimal leverage, or the precise curvature of an antler scraper all reflected an intricate understanding passed down through generations. This mastery of toolcraft was not just about survival, it was the very foundation upon which complex winter construction became not only possible, but remarkably effective. The strength of kinship, social structures for survival. While ingenious material technologies and sophisticated ecological knowledge were undoubtedly foundational to Native American winter survival, the narrative remains incomplete without acknowledging the equally crucial role played by social structures and communal bonds. Indeed, the very fabric of individual existence was often interwoven with the health and prosperity of the collective. A single person's ability to withstand the harshest blizzards or periods of scarcity was frequently contingent upon the robust support network provided by their community. Kinship systems, deeply ingrained in nearly all Native American societies, served as the primary scaffolding for this communal resilience. Extended families and clan structures were not merely genealogical frameworks. They were dynamic networks of obligation and mutual aid. Within these systems, resources, knowledge, and labor were systematically shared. Tribal organization, with its established leadership and decision-making protocols, further streamlined the complex logistics of winter preparation and crisis management. Leaders often played a critical role in coordinating communal hunts, storing provisions, and arbitrating disputes, ensuring that collective efforts remained cohesive and effective. Beyond formal structures, a profound set of social norms and ethical codes underpinned this collective survival. Principles of reciprocity, generosity, and communal responsibility were not abstract ideals but practical imperatives. The sharing of food, particularly during lean times, was not simply an act of charity, but a fundamental expectation, often governed by intricate protocols that ensured equitable distribution and prevented any single household from succumbing to want while others prospered. This ethos fostered an environment where individual needs were balanced against the greater good, strengthening the bonds of trust and solidarity essential for enduring protracted periods of hardship. Thus, while ingenuity in crafting tools and shelter was indispensable, it was the profound strength of social cohesion, the intricate dance of kinship, and the unwavering commitment to collective well-being that truly enabled Native American communities to navigate the unforgiving grip of winter, underscoring that in the face of nature's formidable challenges, community was, for many, the ultimate technology for survival. Sharing and cooperation. Collective resilience. At the heart of Native American winter survival lay an intricate web of sharing and cooperation, a system born of both necessity and deeply held cultural values. Facing the stark realities of freezing, temperatures, scarce resources, and the inherent unpredictability of the natural world, individual success was often insufficient. Instead, communities understood that collective resilience was the most potent defense against winter's relentless threats. Food, fuel, and the very structures that offered sanctuary were frequently communal resources, their distribution and management guided by principles designed to ensure the well-being of all, especially during periods of extreme scarcity. These cooperative systems were underpinned by powerful cultural imperatives, reciprocity and generosity. These were not mere altruistic gestures, but deeply ingrained survival strategies that fostered mutual interdependence. The expectation of reciprocity, that today's help would be reciprocated in kind tomorrow, created a robust social safety net, while the practice of generosity ensured that no family or individual was left to face the biting cold, hunger, or exposure alone. This communal ethic was a practical guarantee against isolation and abandonment, forging bonds that were vital when resources dwindled and hardships mounted. Examples of this collective spirit abound across diverse Native American cultures. Communal hunting, such as the vast buffalo drives of the Plains tribes or the organized deer surrounds in woodland areas, maximized the yield of critical protein and fat reserves, far beyond what any single hunter could achieve. The bounty from such endeavors was then meticulously distributed according to established protocols, often prioritizing the elderly, the very young, and those unable to hunt. Similarly, the gathering of essential resources like firewood, medicinal plants, and construction materials was a shared undertaking, pooling labor and knowledge to secure provisions on a scale necessary for community-wide sustenance. Shelter, too, often embodied this communal ethos. Multi-family longhouses of the Iroquois, or the large insulated winter lodges found in other regions, were constructed through collective effort, utilizing pooled labor and resources to create robust shared dwellings. These structures not only offered superior warmth and protection from the elements, but also fostered a sense of shared responsibility and community intimacy throughout the long, dark months. Within these spaces, warmth from shared fires and the communal preparation of meals further reinforced the interdependent nature of their existence. Ultimately, this profound commitment to collective resilience mitigated the inherent risks of individual failure. If one hunter returned empty-handed, the community still ate. If one family's stores ran low, others contributed. This comprehensive support system strengthened the entire community, transforming individual vulnerabilities into collective strengths. The ethical underpinnings of caring for one's kin and neighbors were inextricably linked with the practical necessity of survival. For Native American peoples, the true strength of the community and its ability to withstand winter's harshest trials lay in the unwavering commitment of its members to share, support, and uplift one another. Elders and knowledge keepers, passing down, wisdom central to the enduring survival of Native American communities through the harshest of winters was the invaluable role of elders and knowledge keepers. These revered individuals served as the living repositories of wisdom, meticulously gathering and transmitting vital survival knowledge across countless generations. Their methods of education were deeply embedded in the fabric of daily life, relying primarily on oral traditions, intricate storytelling, and direct hands-on instruction. Far from mere entertainment, these narratives were sophisticated pedagogical tools, encoding critical information about the environment, resource management, and social protocols essential for winter's challenges. Elders possessed an encyclopedic understanding of their territories, an intimate knowledge cultivated over decades of observation and experience. They could interpret subtle shifts in weather patterns, predicting impending blizzards or thaws with remarkable accuracy. Their expertise extended to the intricate behaviors of animals, knowing their migration routes, hibernation patterns, and prime hunting locations, ensuring access to vital protein. Furthermore, they held detailed knowledge of plant locations, identifying dormant roots, barks, and berries that could provide sustenance or medicinal properties when other resources were scarce. The crafting of specialized tools, from snowshoes to ice fishing implements, was another domain where their direct instruction was paramount, ensuring the skills and techniques were perfectly replicated and passed down. Beyond the practical, elders also maintained and taught the spiritual practices and ceremonies that fostered community cohesion, resilience, and a profound respect for the natural world, understanding that spiritual well-being was inextricably linked to physical survival. Their status within the community was one of profound respect and authority, their wisdom actively sought and diligently followed. This continuous intergenerational learning was not merely about preservation. It was a dynamic process where strategies were constantly refined and adapted to changing environmental conditions, ensuring optimal effectiveness. The unbroken chain of knowledge, passed from elder to youth through patient mentorship and lived experience, stood as the cornerstone of long-term resilience, enabling Native American peoples to not only endure, but thrive amidst the most formidable winter landscapes. Winter ceremonies and storytelling, spiritual sustenance. Beyond the ingenious shelters and sophisticated food preservation techniques, Native American survival through the brutal winter months hinged critically on a profound understanding of human psychology and the cultivation of spiritual and cultural resilience. When the landscape lay dormant under a blanket of snow and the days grew short and dark, the true battle was often against isolation, fear, and the gnawing anxieties of scarcity. It was during these challenging times that winter ceremonies Rituals and the ancient art of storytelling emerged as indispensable pillars of emotional and psychological sustenance. These practices were not merely recreational, they were vital mechanisms for strengthening community bonds, reaffirming deep-seated cultural values, and maintaining an unbroken connection with the spiritual world. Gathered within the warmth of communal spaces, families and clans engaged in shared experiences that meticulously wove the social fabric tighter. Storytelling, in particular, transcended mere entertainment, serving as a powerful pedagogical tool. These winter narratives, often told only during the cold season, transported listeners to ancient times, recounting creation myths, ancestral journeys, and the exploits of heroic figures or wily tricksters. For the Anishinaabe, or Ojibwe people, for instance, the Adizuka'anagas, sacred stories or legends, featuring characters like Nanabojo, offered profound moral lessons, practical survival strategies, and instilled a deep reverence for the interconnectedness of all life. They taught patience, resourcefulness, respect for elders, and the consequences of hubris, all critical virtues for navigating harsh environments. Ceremonies, too, played a crucial role in countering the psychological weight of winter. The Hopi people's soil. Winter solstice ceremony, for example, marked the shortest day of the year, a pivotal moment for an agricultural society. This elaborate ritual involving prayers, purification, and symbolic gestures was a profound act of collective hope, dedicated to turning the sun back and ensuring its return for the coming planting season. Such ceremonies provided a tangible sense of purpose, reminding individuals of their place within the cosmic order and their collective responsibility to maintain balance. The rhythmic drumming, chanting, and shared meals fostered a powerful sense of belonging, transforming potential despair into a reaffirmation of life's cyclical nature and the promise of renewal. These cultural expressions offered more than just hope and a sense of purpose. They provided crucial entertainment and distraction from the relentless hardship. The laughter shared during a humorous tale, the awe inspired by a sacred narrative, or the focused participation in a ceremonial dance, all served to break the monotony and alleviate the psychological strain of confinement and limited resources. They were active engagements that fostered mental agility and emotional fortitude. By sharing these experiences, communities reinforced their shared identity, passed down generations of accumulated wisdom on survival and resilience, and celebrated their unique relationship with the natural world. In doing so, these spiritual and cultural practices were not just about enduring winter, they were about thriving through it, ensuring the holistic well-being and continuity of the people. Health and well-being. Traditional medicine in winter, beyond the immediate need for shelter and sustenance. Winter presented a formidable challenge to health and well-being for Native American communities. The prolonged exposure to cold, damp conditions, often compounded by close quarters within winter dwellings, fostered an environment ripe for specific ailments. Respiratory infections, coughs, colds, and more severe lung ailments were common, their spread facilitated by proximity. Frostbite was a constant threat to exposed extremities, capable of causing severe damage, while hypothermia, a perilous drop in core body temperature, could prove fatal without swift intervention. Native American understanding of these illnesses often transcended mere physical symptoms. While recognizing environmental factors, many traditions viewed sickness as a manifestation of imbalance, perhaps a disharmony with nature, a spiritual transgression, or the influence of malevolent forces. This perspective underscored a holistic approach to health, where the physical, mental, and spiritual were inextricably linked. To address these multifaceted threats, Indigenous peoples developed sophisticated systems of traditional medicine, deeply rooted in centuries of ecological observation and spiritual wisdom. A vast pharmacopoeia of medicinal plants was central to their healing practices. Knowledge of local flora and fauna for therapeutic purposes was meticulously observed, practiced, and passed down through oral traditions from generation to generation. Barks, roots, leaves, and berries were prepared in myriad ways, as teas and infusions for internal consumption, as poultices for topical application, or as balms and salves. For instance, willow bark, rich in compounds akin to modern aspirin, was widely used for pain relief and fever reduction. while various conifer resins served as antiseptic salves for wounds and frostbite. Echinacea, or purple coneflower, was often employed to boost immunity and combat infections. Beyond botanical remedies, healing extended to powerful communal and spiritual practices. The sweat lodge, a sacred structure often central to winter survival, provided not only physical warmth and detoxification through steam, but also a profound spiritual cleansing and opportunity for prayer, vital for both prevention and recovery. Poultices of crushed herbs, clays, or even animal fats were applied directly to afflictions, designed to draw out infection, reduce inflammation, or soothe pain. Spiritual healers, often referred to as medicine people or shamans, played a critical role, guiding ceremonies, offering prayers and songs, and performing rituals aimed at restoring balance and addressing the spiritual roots of illness. This integrated approach, recognizing that true health emerged from harmony between the individual, the community, and the spiritual world, was fundamental to their resilience against winter's harshest trials. Mental fortitude. Overcoming winter's psychological toll, beyond the physical demands of shelter and sustenance, winter presented an equally formidable, though often invisible, adversary: the psychological strain of prolonged cold. Days shortened, landscapes became stark and uniform, and communities, while together, could feel intensely isolated from the wider world by impassable snows. The relentless grip of cold, coupled with the monotony of indoor life and the repetitive nature of daily tasks, bred potential for anxiety and cabin fever. Fear of scarcity, that vital stores might diminish before the spring thaw, was a constant, chilling undercurrent, threatening to erode morale and individual resolve. Yet, Native American cultures developed sophisticated strategies not just for physical endurance, but for cultivating profound mental fortitude. Communal life was a powerful antidote to isolation and despondency. Winter became a period for intensive crafting, repairing tools, weaving, and extensive storytelling. These shared activities were not merely productive. They reinforced social bonds, fostered a sense of collective purpose, and provided opportunities for intergenerational learning and interaction, preventing the corrosive effects of solitude. Humor played a critical role in diffusing tension and maintaining lightness. Trickster tales, shared jokes, and light-hearted banter provided essential psychological release, reminding individuals of their shared humanity and the enduring spirit of their people. Similarly, traditional games, from intricate dice games and guessing contests played by firelight to outdoor snow snake games when conditions allowed, were more than mere pastimes. They stimulated minds, encouraged friendly competition, and offered vital distractions from the harsh realities outside, fostering a spirit of resilience and joy. Central to mental well-being were deeply ingrained spiritual beliefs. A profound connection to the sacred provided a framework for understanding the world, including the cycles of winter. Ceremonies, prayers, and rituals offered solace, expressed gratitude, and reaffirmed communal identity and hope for renewal. These practices instilled a sense of purpose and belonging, reminding individuals that they were part of a larger, meaningful existence, transcending immediate hardship. This spiritual connection extended to the land itself. Winter was not merely a period of adversity, but a sacred time for rest, reflection, and preparation for spring's rebirth. Individuals found strength in their integral role within the community, understanding that their contributions, no matter how small, were vital to the collective survival. This deep sense of purpose, coupled with an intimate knowledge of their environment, fostered a pragmatic optimism and an acceptance of natural cycles. Ultimately, the ability of Native American communities to navigate the psychological rigors of winter stands as a testament to their holistic adaptive strategies. Mental strength, fostered through communal support, cultural practices, spiritual grounding, and a profound connection to their world, proved as indispensable for survival as any physical preparation. It underscored a comprehensive approach where psychological resilience was not merely a byproduct, but a fundamental pillar of enduring through the coldest months. Umakshans Inuit and Yupik, masters of the ice world in the unforgiving expanse of the Arctic and subarctic, where winter reigns supreme for much of the year, the Inuit and Yupik peoples forged a survival strategy unparalleled in its ingenuity and resilience. Confronting a treeless, ice-dominated landscape, their very existence was inextricably linked to the bounty of the sea. demonstrating an unparalleled mastery of extreme cold environments. Their reliance on marine mammals was absolute and comprehensive. Seals, whales, and walruses provided not only sustenance, but also the essential resources for warmth, light, and shelter. Blubber, a rich source of calories, also fueled kudliks, stone lamps that provided crucial light and heat within their homes, allowing for extended periods of activity during the long polar nights. Hides were meticulously prepared for multi-layered clothing, offering exceptional insulation against sub-zero temperatures, and for constructing coverings for their unique dwellings and vessels. Bones and ivory were fashioned into tools, weapons, and structural elements. Acquiring these vital resources demanded profound ecological knowledge and specialized hunting techniques. During the depths of winter, when the sea ice solidified, seal hunting often involved a patient, solitary vigil at breathing holes known as aglas. Hunters, often with the aid of trained dogs, would detect the faint exhalations of seals, then wait, poised with a harpoon, for the precise moment to strike. For larger game, such as whales, communities collaborated, utilizing robust umiaks, large, open skin boats, to pursue these colossal marine mammals, a testament to collective effort and courage. Their specialized tools, finely honed over millennia, reflected their environment. The harpoon, with its detachable head and retrieving line, was central to marine hunting. The agile kayak, a marvel of design constructed from driftwood or bone frames covered with seal skin, allowed for swift, silent pursuit of prey on open water. Protection from the relentless cold necessitated remarkable architectural innovation. The iconic igloo, or snow house, was not merely a temporary shelter, but a highly efficient dwelling. Constructed from carefully cut snow blocks, its dome shape distributed weight evenly, while the snow itself provided excellent insulation. A raised sleeping platform and a cold trap entrance further minimized heat loss, creating an interior significantly warmer than the ambient air. In some regions, particularly where snow was less consistent or for more permanent settlements, sod houses or karmaks offered robust protection. Built from whalebone or driftwood frames covered with layers of sod and earth, these structures provided exceptional thermal mass and insulation against the biting winds. This profound adaptation extended beyond mere survival. It was a holistic integration with their environment. The Inuit and Yupik peoples demonstrated an unparalleled understanding of ice dynamics, animal behavior, and material science, allowing them to thrive in a landscape that challenged all others. Their resilience, born from deep ecological knowledge and an ingenious spirit, stands as a powerful testament to human adaptability in the face of nature's most extreme conditions. DNA, Athabascan, forest and tundra strategies across the vast, unforgiving expanse of the subarctic, where temperatures plummet to extreme lows and the landscape is dominated by dense boreal forests and expansive tundra. The Dean-speaking peoples, including groups like the Gwich'in, Dogrib, and Chipewyan, developed an intricate tapestry of winter survival strategies. Their existence was intrinsically linked to a semi-nomadic lifestyle, a necessity dictated by the movements of the caribou herds, which served as their primary sustenance. Following these migrations, along with other large game such as moose, allowed them to remain within reach of vital food sources, even as the seasons turned harsh. Their temporary winter encampments featured shelters expertly adapted to the frigid conditions. Conical teepees, often smaller and more steeply pitched than those found on the plains, or simple lean-tos, formed the core of their dwellings. These structures were meticulously crafted from sturdy poles, then covered with durable caribou or moose hides, or, where hides were scarce, with tightly woven spruce boughs. A critical element of their insulation strategy involved banking the exterior with snow, creating an additional, highly effective thermal barrier against the biting winds and intense cold. Inside, a central fire provided warmth, and smoke vents at the apex allowed for ventilation. Winter travel and hunting were facilitated by ingenious technologies. Snowshoes, crafted from wood and sinew, were indispensable for traversing deep, soft snow, distributing weight evenly and allowing for efficient movement across challenging terrain. For transporting game, firewood, and supplies, toboggans, long flat sleds pulled by humans or dogs, were essential, gliding smoothly over the snowpack where wheeled vehicles would be impractical. These tools were not merely conveniences, they were critical enablers of their hunting and migratory patterns. The Dean diet during winter was diverse and resourceful, a testament to their comprehensive understanding of the ecosystem. Caribou and moose provided not only meat for sustenance, but also fat, hides for clothing and shelter, and bones for tools. From the ice-covered lakes and rivers, they expertly fished, cutting holes through thick ice to access vital protein. Cached berries, gathered and preserved during the warmer months, offered essential vitamins and minerals, helping to prevent nutritional deficiencies. Furthermore, their intimate knowledge of the boreal forest and tundra ecosystems enabled them to trap and snare smaller game, such as rabbits, ptarmigan, and various fur-bearers, providing supplementary food and crucial pelts for warm clothing, bedding, and trade. This profound ecological understanding, coupled with their adaptive technologies and resourcefulness, allowed the Dean to not only survive but thrive in one of the planet's most challenging environments. Iroquois Confederacy, enduring the forest, winter in the frigid expanse of the northeastern woodlands. The Iroquois Confederacy, a powerful alliance including the Mohawk, Seneca, and Oneida nations, developed an intricate tapestry of adaptations to survive the unforgiving winter months. At the core of their winter strategy was the Longhouse, a marvel of communal architecture that served as a permanent, multi-family dwelling. Constructed from sturdy timber frames covered with sheets of elm bark, these elongated structures could stretch for hundreds of feet, housing multiple related families under a single roof. Within, a central aisle featured a series of hearths, shared by families occupying adjacent compartments. Smoke from these fires, vital for warmth and cooking, escaped through carefully designed openings in the roof, creating a surprisingly efficient and communal heating system that allowed residents to weather the bitter cold together. Their sophisticated agricultural practices formed the bedrock of their winter sustenance. The three sisters, corn, beans, and squash, were not merely cultivated, but harvested with meticulous foresight. After drying and processing, these vital provisions were stored in ingeniously designed subterranean caches. These deep, often lined pits, carefully concealed and insulated, protected the valuable harvest from freezing temperatures, moisture, and pests, ensuring a reliable food supply throughout the long, lean winter. While stored provisions were paramount, winter hunting remained a crucial activity to supplement their diet with protein. Iroquois hunters, intimately familiar with the forest, employed strategic tracking techniques to pursue deer, moose, and other forest game. A pivotal innovation in winter travel was the snowshoe. These broad, latticed frames, worn on the feet, distributed weight over a larger area, allowing hunters to traverse deep snowdrifts with remarkable efficiency, often gaining a significant advantage over animals struggling in the heavy snow. Beyond material provisions, the Iroquois fostered robust social structures and a rich ceremonial life that provided profound emotional and spiritual sustenance through the cold months. Gatherings within the warmth of the Longhouse reinforced kinship ties, shared responsibilities, and communal identity. Winter ceremonies, often focused on renewal, storytelling, and expressions of gratitude, served to uplift spirits, strengthen community bonds, and maintain cultural continuity amidst the challenges of the season. This intricate balance of settled agricultural foresight, ingenious architectural design, adaptable hunting strategies, and resilient social and spiritual practices allowed the Iroquois Confederacy to not only endure, but to thrive amidst the formidable winters of the northeastern woodlands. Algonquian tribes, coastal and inland adaptations across the vast, often snow-covered expanse of the northeastern woodlands and Great Lakes region. Diverse Algonquian-speaking tribes, including the Wampanoag, Ojibwe, and Cree, developed remarkably sophisticated and regionally specific winter survival strategies. Their ingenuity was rooted in a profound understanding of their local ecosystems and an adaptive approach to shelter, sustenance, and resource management. Central to their winter resilience were their expertly constructed dwellings. In the southern reaches, tribes like the Wampanoag utilized wigwams, dome-shaped or oval structures built from a framework of flexible saplings, typically bent and tied together to form a sturdy skeleton. This frame was then meticulously covered with overlapping layers of bark, such as birch or elm, or woven cattail and reed mats, creating an effective barrier against the biting cold and snow. Further north, among the Ojibwe and Cree, conical lodges, often resembling teepees, but with a more permanent, bark-covered construction, were common. These shelters were designed with a central fire pit, allowing smoke to vent through an opening at the apex, while the interior was often lined with insulating animal hides, maintaining a surprising warmth even in sub-zero temperatures. Their subsistence during these harsh months was a masterful combination of stored provisions and active, strategic hunting and gathering. Prior to winter's arrival, communities meticulously dried and smoked meats and fish, processed and stored nuts, berries, and, where cultivated, corn. These vital reserves provided a critical baseline. However, winter was also a time for focused hunting. Deer, moose, and bear were primary targets, pursued by skilled hunters, often using snowshoes to traverse deep snow, their knowledge of animal behavior paramount. Trapping smaller game, like beaver, rabbit, and marten, provided both essential protein and valuable furs for warmth. Ice fishing was another indispensable activity. Holes were cut into frozen lakes and rivers, and various techniques, from spearing to angling with bone hooks and lures, yielded a steady supply of fish. As late winter gave way to early spring, a particularly vital energy source emerged: maple sugaring. When the days warmed above freezing and nights remained cold, the sap began to flow in the maple trees. Tribes would tap the trees, collect the sap in birch bark containers, and then boil it down over fires, often for days, to produce syrup and hard sugar cakes. This concentrated source of carbohydrates was not only a much-needed boost of energy after months of lean winter diets, but also a significant cultural and social event, marking the promise of renewed life. The precise application of these strategies varied considerably across the vast Algonquian territories, showcasing their incredible flexibility. Coastal communities, like some Wampanoag groups, might rely more heavily on stored seafood and coastal hunting, while deep forest hunters, such as the Cree, were expert at tracking large game over vast, snowy expanses and extensively utilized snowshoes and toboggans for travel and transport. Great Lakes tribes like the Ojibwe excelled in both forest hunting and extensive ice fishing on the region's vast frozen waters, supplementing their diet with stored wild rice. This regional adaptation, coupled with a profound, generational knowledge of their local flora and fauna, allowed Algonquian-speaking peoples to not merely endure, but to thrive in some of North America's most challenging winter environments. Lakota and Cheyenne. Winter on the open prairies for the nomadic plains tribes, such as the Lakota and Cheyenne. The relentless grip of winter on the vast, snow-swept prairies presented an existential challenge. Their survival hinged almost entirely on the American bison, a creature whose immense bulk provided an astonishing array of resources essential for enduring the harshest months. Every part of the bison was meticulously utilized. Its rich, fatty meat was the primary food source, often preserved as pemmican, a concentrated mixture of dried meat, rendered fat, and sometimes berries, providing vital calories and sustenance when fresh game was scarce. The thick, durable hides were indispensable. Expertly tanned, they formed the covering for their iconic teepees and were fashioned into layers of exceptionally warm clothing, blankets, and robes that offered crucial insulation against bitter winds and sub-zero temperatures. Bones were crafted into tools and implements, while sinew provided strong thread and binding material. Their portable teepees, far from being primitive structures, were ingeniously adapted for extreme cold. Constructed with an inner liner, often made of tanned hides, these dwellings created an insulating air pocket between the liner and the outer cover, effectively trapping heat. Careful fire management within the teepee's central hearth, coupled with adjustable smoke flaps at the apex, ensured efficient ventilation while maximizing warmth. As winter approached, these tribes would strategically relocate their camps from the exposed plains to more sheltered environments. Deep river valleys, coulees, or densely wooded areas offered crucial protection from the biting winds and provided a degree of natural insulation. Here, in these more forgiving landscapes, they would establish their winter encampments, often remaining in place for several months. Hunting bison in deep snow required immense skill and cooperation. While the snow could impede the bison's movement, it also made stalking and maneuvering challenging for hunters. Their masterful horsemanship, combined with precise communal hunting practices, became paramount. Groups of skilled hunters would work in concert, often using the snow to their advantage to drive bison into drifts or ambushes, ensuring a successful harvest that would feed the entire community. This collective effort, coupled with their inherent mobility and deep understanding of the unforgiving prairie environment, was not merely a strategy for survival. It was a testament to their profound adaptation and resilience in the face of nature's most formidable season. Mandan, Hidatsa Arikara, Earth Lodge villages, in the harsh realities of the upper Missouri River Basin, where winter temperatures plummeted and blizzards swept across the open plains, sedentary agricultural tribes such as the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara developed sophisticated and unique adaptations for survival. Central to their enduring presence were their substantial earth lodges, architectural marvels meticulously engineered to withstand the extreme cold. These permanent dwellings, often reaching 40 to 60 feet in diameter, were constructed from a robust framework of cottonwood logs, layered with willow branches, grass, and an incredibly thick insulating mantle of earth. This design created a remarkably stable internal temperature, providing a warm, sheltered haven for extended families throughout the frigid months. The cornerstone of their winter sustenance was their highly productive agricultural system. During the warmer seasons, vast fields of corn, beans, and squash were diligently cultivated. The harvested bounty was not merely consumed, it was systematically dried and stored in subterranean cache pits, bell-shaped, expertly lined, and sealed chambers dug beneath or near their lodges. These ingenious underground pantries protected thousands of bushels of food from freezing, pests, and spoilage, ensuring a reliable food supply even when the land was blanketed in snow. While stored provisions formed the dietary backbone, these resourceful communities also supplemented their meals with strategic winter hunting. Bison, deer, and other game were pursued, often by groups of hunters venturing from the villages, providing crucial protein and fats. Furthermore, the frozen rivers and lakes offered another vital resource: ice fishing. Through holes cut into the thick ice, an array of fish could be caught, adding diversity to their winter diet. Beyond mere shelter and sustenance, the very fabric of their society provided immense resilience. Their large, fortified villages, sometimes housing thousands of people, fostered a profound sense of security and social cohesion. Within these communal hubs, knowledge was shared, labor was divided, and mutual support systems ensured that no individual or family faced the brutal winter in isolation. This sedentary, communal approach provided a stark contrast to the more nomadic plains tribes, who relied on mobility and following the bison herds to navigate the seasons. For the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara, their permanent villages and sophisticated agricultural infrastructure were not just homes, but vital fortresses against the unforgiving winter. Haida and Tlingit, coastal abundance. Winter challenges along the rugged coastlines and deep fjords of the Pacific Northwest. Peoples such as the Haida and Tlingit flourished amidst an environment renowned for its natural abundance. Yet, even in this rich landscape, winter presented a formidable challenge, demanding sophisticated strategies for survival. Their response was a testament to ingenuity, communal strength, and a profound connection to their environment.